Today, I want to deep dive into a real hands-on on how you can use large language models or LLMs for numbers. I guess it kind of makes sense that you can do this since we often call it the language of mathematics. But I think most people, when they think about large language models, chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, they think about it using it for editing or creating language, words, prose, editing copy, things like this. I use it for that a lot. We'll probably do another video on that. But today I want to talk about one of my favorite use cases for large language models, which is working with numbers. They're actually incredibly adept at working with numbers. And we're going to get into a screen share here and just actually show you using ChatGPT in particular for a couple of different use cases working with numbers. So here we go. Let's take a look. The first example I wanted to use is just kind of looking at data in a standard spreadsheet or CSV. For this use case, I'm going to just use data that we used in our AI for financial services certification course. Links in the description. And that's a data set from Kaggle. Kaggle is a public website with data and kind of machine learning problems, challenges, contests for you to build your own models. And one of the data sets they have is a data set about home sales in Ames, Iowa. It's a random city, but there you go, Ames, Iowa. And it's a pretty long data set, and it's got lots of information about houses and the sale price of the houses. And then your objective, of course, in that competition is to build a model to predict sales prices of houses. But today, it's just going to serve as a great data set. So I'm going to grab the data CSV. I'm going to throw it here into ChatGPT. I'm just at chatgpt.com. And I'm putting this spreadsheet in, and I'm just going to say, one of the interesting things is not only can it graph numbers for you, but it can just kind of give you answers about stuff. So what do you see in this spreadsheet? Spell spreadsheet right, it'll help. Not really, it'll probably figure it out anyway. So here you go. It's imported the spreadsheet. You can see some of the data here, lot frontage, lot area, kind of street that it's on. And there's, I want to say 70 or 80 files, but here we go. The spreadsheet contains data on the Ames housing data set, commonly used for regression and property value analysis. There are 2,930 rows representing individual properties or observations, 82 columns. Some of the key columns here: lot area, year built, overall quality, garage area, missing data. This is really interesting. I haven't given it really anything that I'm looking for. Missing data, some columns have a significant number of missing values. A target variable, likely sale price. So it's kind of figured out that this is used for training data for machine learning models. And maybe I want to predict sales price as my key feature. So interesting, it was able to kind of see all that just from looking at the spreadsheet itself without me giving it anything. Now, one of the most common things I'll do here is just start plotting some information. So maybe I'm just curious about like how expensive are the houses? What does it look like? I'll say, can you show me a histogram of the sales prices? So just, are there lots of little prices, big prices? What does it look like? And so here I haven't written any formulas. One of the things you'll notice is this little code symbol, this little kind of terminal or code thing. And if you click on that, you'll find that you can see the code behind each of the things that it does. So here's my graph distribution of sales prices. This is one of the things we talked about in the training course when we went through this data in a little more depth. As you can see, that there's a good number of home prices in this median range, and as you get more expensive, fewer homes that were priced in the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. As I said, this little terminal icon is an indication of how ChatGPT is doing this. So interestingly, if you click on that, you can see that it's actually writing. This is Python code using a variety of libraries. You can see the code. You could copy this and import it into your favorite code editor to play with it. If you're not a code person, you don't need to know anything about the code. It's just kind of there if you want to see how it's being done. But this allows you to start looking for data, which I always find this really interesting. If I can ask something simple here. Can you plot for me sale price versus let's just say square footage, right? The most common variable used when we talk about homes. Can you plot for me sales price versus square footage? And now I haven't given it the names of the individual columns, right? I've just asked in general, can you plot this thing against that thing? It actually figured out that there's an above ground living area in square feet that is the right thing to plot against. It showed me the sales price. I didn't have to know the names of the columns to get this right. It was able to interpret those and then give me the plot. So this looks kind of like what you'd expect, right? The bigger the house gets, the more expensive it sells for. You can see some real outliers in big homes that sell for very little and very, very high. It's interesting. One of the other things we could do, well, it's giving me something, analyze the outliers in the plot, check the correlation between price and features. Let's just see what it says if I say check the correlation between price and features. It's an interesting suggestion. It's kind of giving me some things that maybe I want to ask about. So even if I'm just give it the data, it's interesting. ChatGPT can actually start to tell me things that I may be curious to look into, kind of assessing the data the way an analyst might for you. Here, top positive correlations. So the things most correlated to home price, quality, above ground living area. Again, not surprising. Uh, Garage, cars and area, total basement area, year built. Interesting. And then you've got some negative correlations. So, where there's actually a weak negative signals here, things that we don't like in this. Kitchen above ground. That's interesting. Um, Visualize correlations in a heat map. That sounds pretty interesting. Maybe I'll do that. Visualize correlations in a heat map. And so now I don't even really know exactly what that means, maybe, but I want to see a bunch of different correlations. And so it's going to actually come and pull this data and give me correlations, some of the correlation among the features of significant relationships elsewhere. So, okay, it's showing me the things where the correlation is quite high. Absolute correlation, meaning it can be positive or negative, and it's showing me the correlation between both that variable and sell price, along with that variable and other similar variables. So overall quality, obviously a perfect one, perfectly correlated because it's the same thing. But I can now see the correlation for all these things to sale price in this column or in this row, depending on how you want to look at it. And I can start to understand what the correlation is, not only between sale price and some of these things like quality or size and year built, um, but I can also see the correlation between one another. So I can start to see first floor square footage, basement square footage. Are those things correlated or not? What are these variables are correlated? We see some things that have pretty strong correlations in here. 0.8 overall quality to sale price, so that's very high correlation, right? And things that have much weaker correlations here when you get down to some of the smaller numbers. So I think a pretty interesting actual look at positive, negative correlations, this graph. But again, I haven't written any code. I haven't really told it exactly what I want. I'm just asking for some analysis. And here, analyze outliers. Let's see what it says about outliers. We can look at outliers. It's always an interesting thing in your data set, the outliers. And then we'll pop on to some of the other use cases. I wanted to show you guys about how I tend to use these capabilities in ChatGPT. To me, it's just fascinating to be able to upload a data set like this into a tool like ChatGPT and start just looking at it. And here, again, I said, hey, there's some outliers. Do you want to look at them? And so it's showing me some of these outliers, extreme values, and a couple things. Again, if I were building a machine learning model or evaluating a machine learning model, I might really look at these as things that I've got some nervousness about because I have outlier values. ChatGPT can actually go even a step farther than just analyzing the data. And if I say going back to the chart of sale price and square footage, can you build a linear regression model for that? So I'm typing this in real time. It takes me a little bit of time. Regression model for that. And so here, not just analyzing data, but I'm asking now, can you actually build a very simplistic machine learning model, but a linear regression through that sale price at square footage of a home area graph and show me what the relationship looks like and what a linear regression model would be? And so it's performing its stuff here. It's actually able to not only write the code, but predict the code. And here you can see that plot we had up earlier with prices and a linear regression. So almost anything you can ask about, this, what is the mean? Let's go. The mean and median sale prices. You just want to ask questions about the data, explore relationships between different variables or different columns in your data. It can really do any of those things you want. You want to see mean sale price, median sale price. I could ask for other kinds of information, maybe the middle 50% for any of the variables. So this is, I think, a really powerful way to use large language models, thinking not only about how they can work with you in language, but how they can actually help you interpret data. And I think of this like having a data analyst. I mean, for anybody who has access to data and wants to ask questions about it, sometimes you've got a team that you got to call, and it takes a week to get a turnaround to get an analyst assigned and evaluating data. I'm pretty Excel savvy, or Google Sheets in my case savvy, building formulas and pivot tables and graphs. But this actually can be way easier for me to just start getting into the data and playing with it. One of the things I did with it recently that really surprised me, and this was interesting to me that this capability existed, was I was sent a spreadsheet I was spent as a PDF, as a financials for an organization, and I wanted to look at it. And I just, it was a PDF. I didn't have good access to the data, and it had different rows and columns. And I found out that you can actually upload images and have ChatGPT extract the data from the image and then graph it in similar ways. So I'm going to go ahead and grab. I can't show you the financial document I was looking at when I first discovered this, but I went back to Upstart's S1 back from pre-IPO and said, "Hey, let's grab that data and send it to ChatGPT." And so I just took a screenshot. I literally just pulled open that PDF, grabbed a screenshot of one specific chart from the S1 that shows some financials from 2017, 2018, 2019. Oh, I've uploaded an image of a financial statement. I can extract, analyze. Can I proceed? Yes. Analyze trends in revenue over years. That's a good one. Let's do that. So it's gonna pop in here, suggesting again things that maybe would be good analyses to run or questions to ask. And I was gonna type in analyze the revenue trends for me, but it figured that out that I might want that. So we'll let it spend its time here assessing. Mm. So now it's giving me annual revenue. Can you please plot revenue and total expenses for me? So I always like to see revenue, but I also like to see expenses. So this will be a good little analysis. This data is a couple of years old, only through the first 9 months of 2020, I think. So not recent data on Upstart. Don't go buying or selling stock based on this. Go look at the most recent financials. But I thought this would be pretty good for this purpose, being able to really pull data out. There you go. Show me that in the line graph. And I want to add one more thing, which is another thing I think is really interesting in the ability, which is to add a formula against these things. And can you please add? So what I'd like to do is add a ratio of expenses to revenue. Add a ratio of expenses to revenue, and then see if it can plot that. And the bar chart's weird to me. I'm going to get a line graph because that seems more natural to me as a way to look at time series data. Although I guess theoretically it's really the same thing, but it's just a more natural way for me to look at that. And then see if it can grab this ratio. Ooh, expense to revenue ratio. Oh, yeah. Key. Let's see this. Found key insights. So it's not only can you plot the expense revenue ratio in a different, because it looks like almost zero because it's down there on the same axis of things. We'll see if it can move that to a right side axis so I could actually see the expense ratio over time. Those numbers look pretty close, although I like seeing revenue in 2020 exceeding expenses. So that's a good. There we go. So now it's moved that expense ratio over to the right hand column, and you can see that. And then, what do you think about this data? Let's just see what it says about that. So as you can see here, what it's really done nicely, pull that into a line graph, added the different column, added the ratio and a different, axis. So I can see clearly what was a flat line before. Now you can see because it's just in a very different scale than the others. And there you go. And now here it goes. So it's now talking about what is concerns, early years losses. Okay, that's typical for a growth stage company, about highlights externals, high expense base, profitability only recently achieved. Always good to achieve profitability by IPO though, so I actually don't mind that so much. Cost optimization. And then, it's got other questions, how to calculate profit margins, how do you compare to peers? I won't keep diving into this. I think you can see some really interesting capabilities here. This to me is, again, one of the most interesting things that I like to do with the large language models, particularly ChatGPT, is to give it data. We'll do a different video, maybe diving into using large documents, but to give it numbers and use it like an analyst where I can start asking questions, building ratios. I don't have to design formulas. It can do really interesting things in here. I've even had it in one graph add recessions to a time series graph where I can add a little gray band for recessions, and it pulled in the data for recessions. It was pretty accurate. So very useful tool in my mind to allow any professional who has access to data of some sort that they want to be able to evaluate, that they want to be able to look at and analyze, but doesn't necessarily have the Python ability or substantial Excel ability, or doesn't want to spend the time. It could be just easier to ask questions. This is a really powerful way to do that and a really great use case for some of these large language models. If you like this content, I highly recommend you check out the AI certification for financial services course. We launched that about a year and a half ago, I want to say now. And the recently launched What the AI podcast that I host with Annie Delgado every week, going into the latest trends and developments, news in the world of AI, and breaking it down. We've got a couple hands-on sections where we go over things like this, and hopefully you find one of those two things interesting. Thanks for watching.